So I'd like to say good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Ellen Menchu. I'm the chair of the Clallam County Democrats, and I want to thank you for being here tonight. Excuse me. I want to take a moment to acknowledge and sincerely thank the focus group responsible for the work you'll see this evening. Lisa Decker, Andy Geiger, Wendy Ray Johnson, Tim Wheeler, Linda Middleton, with additional contributions from Norma Turner and Laurel Cripe. Their efforts reflect the remarkable depth and breadth of talent within Clallam County Democrats. Over several weeks, the group met regularly. They pored over source material, examined real-world examples, and insisted on clear, plain language definitions. Throughout the process, their focus remained firmly on what is lawful, practical, and effective. I am deeply grateful and proud for the time, care, and personal commitment they brought to this work. I also want to recognize the honor of having our special guest panelist, Mr. Christopher Armitage, joining us tonight. We appreciate his time and willingness to lend his insight and perspective to this discussion. Mr. Armitage is a journalist, political strategist, and public policy writer, and the founder of the Existentialist Republic, an independent publication found on Substack that focuses on democratic resilience and state-level responses to authoritarian capture. He's widely recognized for originating the soft secession framework that operates fully within the U.S. constitutional system. His work draws on both professional experience and scholarship. Mr. Armitage is a U.S. Air Force veteran and former law enforcement officer, and he holds a Master of Science in Homeland Security. His policy analysis is informed by direct experience inside the institution he now critiques, alongside academic research published and archived for legal scholars and policymakers. Mr. Armitage's writing and research have been cited by institutions, including the Brookings Institute, and covered by outlets such as The Nation, NPR, PBS, Mother Jones, and others. Over the last year and a half, concern has given way to alarm as democratic norms have been steadily eroded. While rallies and creative protests have helped build solidarity, they are not enough for this moment. What's needed now are specific, concrete actions capable of pushing back against and reversing the crimes, harms, and corruption of this regime. While Substack has become home to many former New York Times and Washington Post journalists, as well as scholars, lawyers, and constitutional experts, no platform consistently offers the sober, practical strategies found at Existentialist Republic. Drawing on history's successes and failures against dictatorship, Mr. Armitage now turns to the future, outlining a post-regime vision he calls the American Reformation, a subject for another day. The purpose of tonight's presentation is straightforward: to clearly define soft secession or non-cooperative federalism, to share the group's findings, and to identify areas where state and local action can protect people and democratic institutions peacefully and within our federal system. A major goal is to influence elected officials and inspire others to do the same. With that, I'll turn this over to the focus group to walk us through how they approached this work, what they found, and what it may mean for Clallam County going forward.
Welcome, everyone. Excuse me, this is Lisa Decker, and I'm just going to outline the principles of soft secession. Sorry for the interruption. So, principles of soft secession. Soft secession utilizes lawful non-cooperation to resist federal actions. Soft secession uses constitutional sovereign powers that states already have. In soft secession, nonviolence is absolutely essential. Our citizens use concrete, tried and true tactics, and it's absolutely essential that we build movements to make it happen. And now I turn it over to Andy.
Thank you, Lisa. My name is Andy Geiger. I live in Sequim, and I, like many, have been very frustrated with what's been happening to our country and to our beloved democracy, and very frustrated and feeling impotent to do anything about it. And I discovered soft secession as a topic, and I think it's an extraordinary idea. And I'm delighted to be part of this terrific group of people on this task force. We started out creating our own definition of soft secession, and this is what we came up with. A coalition of state citizens who demand that state officials use lawful non-cooperation to uphold the Constitution and rights, benefits, and resources protected by state and local laws. We work to identify practical actions for our state and for states to protect citizens and uphold values amid federal overreach. We recognize that although we're not a majority, we have 22 states with either a Democratic governor or a Democratic attorney general, or mostly both. And they have worked extremely hard together and have accomplished a great many things, particularly reacting to actions to withhold congressionally authorized funds for many, many things that are too numerous to mention. But the lawsuits have gone well, and the states that have taken the action have won over 80% of their cases. Soft secession does not mean states and cities declaring independence or flying new flags. It means states, cities, and municipalities quietly building the capacity to govern without federal cooperation, so that when the federal government turns hostile, they already have the infrastructure to say no. And that's a quote from Mr. Armitage, who's with us tonight. So we use our state's sovereign constitutional powers. We have our own government. Our governor can create an executive order, just like the President of the United States can. He can declare a state of emergency and can take action that way. We control and own infrastructure that supports many federal facilities. For example, a great big military base needs roads for access and utilities and all of those kinds of things that are really operated extremely well by the state. So these are powers that we have and that we're starting to learn how to use. I mentioned the strategizing and unifying with other blue states for greater impact. And to tell us more about that, I'm delighted and honored to present Wendy Ray Johnson, who's going to talk about examples of soft secession.
Thank you, Andy. My name is Wendy Ray Johnson, and it's a pleasure to have you all here. I'm so glad you could make it. Soft succession is happening as we speak. And one of the most recent examples is the West Coast Health Alliance, which was formed on September 3rd of 2025 by California, Oregon, and Washington. The immediately following the, what I would call dismantling of the CDC. The next day, Hawaii joined as well. So we have 4 states collaborating to create, it's voluntary collaboration, and it aims to share expertise, to improve coordination, to enhance capacity, to strengthen regional readiness, and promote and protect science-based, evidence-based public health policy, and have our insurance companies provide us with preventive care that is not being recommended any longer by the CDC, to counteract the mis and disinformation of the current CDC. So we safeguard vaccines. Our governors joined together. They hired a lot of the people that were let go from the CDC for their expertise, and we are utilizing collaboration to really solidify and create what's best for the people and for our well-being and healthcare, and in responses to pandemic and such, we'll be ready, unlike the rest of the country that's not. Another example is also about the same time as the East Coast Health Alliance. They have 9 states doing the same thing as the West Coast Health Alliance, and all of those are easily Googled with just saying that, West Coast Health Alliance or East Coast Health Alliance. And it's actually on our Washington State Health website as well, the whole explanation. Really, really a great example of states collaborating and using their sovereign laws and rights to decide what's best for the people of our state. The next example is abortion. The link that I have here is a comprehensive and interactive website, and you can really see exactly how restrictive or how unrestricted each state is. When you click on to this site, and this was really right off of Wikipedia, it was an easy search. Every state has decided how restrictive or protective they will be of abortion rights, and this is another example of states' sovereignty and succession. The next example that's pretty fresh in our minds is cannabis. I mean, it's now legal in 40 states. It is no longer it's pretty decriminalized. You can see in the green states where there's a black dot, they have decriminalized it. But 99% of the arrests for cannabis are made by state officers. So when states begin to decriminalize and then legalize, they didn't override federal law, they just stopped enforcing federal law. And that is a really good example of soft secession, when we stop enforcing federal law and we enforce according to our state laws. I think another great example that people can remember is same-sex marriage. Massachusetts in 2004 was the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. And by 2015, the Supreme Court ruled that it was a constitutional right. So these are examples of existing soft secession that is already a part of our lives. And we now, with Christopher's insights and his actions that are so specific, we can band together and really produce the results we're looking for with our current situation. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Wheeler to talk about our National Guard. Wendy Ray.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wheeler. I live in Squim on Family Farm. And this is an issue of the National Guard and law enforcement. It's an issue that we thought must be in our discussion of soft secession because lives are at stake. People are being killed by our so-called law enforcement. And so we needed to take a look at what the Constitution and what federal and state law has to say about the National Guard. So I'm just going to read from some notes that I prepared on this issue. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits the military from any role in law enforcement. The only exception to that is insurrection, which is Title 10 of the Constitution. And it authorizes the president to federalize the National Guard and use them for purposes of suppressing, putting down an insurrection. So that is a law enforcement function. But it's very limited. For example, the Constitution forbids the president from ordering a National Guard detachment from one state to go across the border into another state, which is a form of invasion prohibited by the Constitution. So there are limitations on this this power, even the right under Title 10. And at base, one of the most fundamental concepts of the National Guard is that it is a state function. And the National Guard is subject to the command and control of the governor of the state. And so this is a very strong example of sovereignty, of state sovereignty over the National Guard that is only subject to cancellation under very specific circumstances of insurrection. A famous use of the federalization of the National Guard was President Eisenhower's federalizing of the National Guard to protect African American school children who were integrating schools in Little Rock, Arkansas after the 1958 Supreme Court ruling. And you take note of that exception, that use by President Eisenhower. It was for the purpose of protecting life, not for the taking of life. And it was for protecting the rights of these school children to an equal education. So those were humane and worthy goals that we support. But now we face another situation. In 2020, President Trump, in violation of the Constitution, ordered National Guard troops into Washington, D.C. to put down the mass protests against the murder by Minneapolis police of George Floyd. These protests were peaceful and nonviolent exercise of our First Amendment right to assemble to protest injustice. And who could say that it was an insurrection? No, it was not an insurrection. It was a defense of human rights. And everyone understood that. It was speaking out, it was acting against the violation of George Floyd's rights by law enforcement in Minneapolis. Then came the street protests in 2025 against the Trump-ordered street roundup of people of color in the name of deporting immigrants. Literally, millions of people across the U.S., including here in Clallam County, rose up in protest against this use of the National Guard to suppress this protest, these protests. And Trump sent letters to 15 governors asking their cooperation in sending National Guard troops into Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland, Oregon. 4 governors refused to support Trump's order. So Trump invoked Title 10, the insurrection clause, and sent National Guard troops from 11 states into the 3 cities in flagrant violation of that prohibition against invading another state. The governors, mayors, and millions of citizens strongly protested Trump's use of National Guard troops, who together with heavily armed, masked ICE agents and Border Patrol officers unleashed violent repression against the protesters. And I didn't know this. You learned something doing research on this. On December 23rd, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that Trump failed to prove that the protests in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland, Oregon were so violent that local and state law enforcement were unable to contain it. Trump grudgingly ordered the removal of the National Guard from the 3 cities, but warned they will, in Trump's words, come back, perhaps in a much different and stronger form. Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, the mask-wearing ICE thugs were on a rampage against so-called illegal immigrants. They were met with hundreds of thousands of protesters. These ICE gunmen were so out of control, they murdered 2 U.S. citizens, Denise Nicole Good and Alex Pretty. Minneapolis Governor Tim Walz recognized the fascist-like menace in this situation. Trump might federalize the National Guard and order them to reinforce the ICE terrorism in the Twin Cities. Governor Walz activated the Minnesota National Guard, ordered them into the streets, assigned to protect the lives of the people of his state. Minnesota guardsmen in uniform but unarmed went into the streets of Minneapolis in the sub-zero cold, serving hot chocolate, sandwiches, and coffee to more than 100,000 street protesters. The Guard is on the side of the people. Governor Walz, I just learned this from Wendy Ray, told me about this. Governor Walz ordered each of the guardsmen to wear an orange vest to make clear that they were separate. They were not connected to the ICE thugs. They were there to protect the people. That was Governor Walz. We should contact our own governor, Bob Ferguson, and urge him to make clear that he will exercise his authority as the highest elected official of the sovereign state of Washington. He will order the Washington State National Guard to protect human life, including immigrants, and not assist in ICE repression. Thank you. And now Andy is next. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, everyone.
There.
Got it?
There we go. There we go. Thank you.
Sure.
Uncooperative federalism, quote unquote, is the term Yale law professor Heather Gerken uses to describe the strategy of states not participating in federal enforcement. She argues that states derive significant power from their role as servants in the federal system. She identifies three key mechanisms. Regulatory resistance, using federally conferred power to resist federal policy. Informational control, withholding cooperation and data sharing and enforcement. Resource denial, refusing to provide state resources for federal programs. Management of state resources must include the flow of money and the use of financial institutions in the process. Massachusetts sends $4,846 more per capita to the federal government than it received. New York contributed $142.6 billion more than it received over 5 years. That's New York City. New York State. California has accumulated $76 billion in reserves. Illinois sends more to Washington, D.C. than it receives, giving Governor Pritzker economic leverage in federal disputes. Washington is also a state which sends more money to the federal government than it receives. Christopher Armitage says, financial independence creates the foundation for resistance. Establishing a state public bank would help make that happen. The state bank is a state-owned, state-run financial institution. It would be the legal depository for all state funds, and it would use these funds to fund such as development, agriculture, small businesses, student loans, rural medical facilities, etc. There is an example. The Bank of North Dakota. North Dakota is not exactly a progressive state, but it's the only state in the union that has a state bank. It was founded in 1919. It is the legal depository for all state funds in North Dakota and uses these deposits to fund development, agriculture, and small businesses. It has received praise and media attention and is very popular in the state. It was especially so in 2008 during the financial crisis for their actions during the COVID-19 pandemic. They have always had a profit. They have earned a profit every year of their existence. Other states have tried to replicate the Bank of North Dakota, but have been limited by political gridlock and the power dynamics in banking. How do we do this? How do we establish a bank? Again, the state bank is state-owned and state-managed, fully funded with state monies, and North Dakota is an example. A publicly owned state bank of Washington could keep taxpayers' money in our state, working for our state. Financial public works, infrastructure, and economic development. Create jobs and build infrastructure. Increases access to capital for small businesses, working with and supporting local community banks. Support innovation and economic development in new areas like the green economy to create jobs. Promote smart government and smart use of taxpayers' money, investing in ourselves. The source of those ideas is a paper written by Senator Robert Hasegawa, Washington State District 11, called the Washington Investment Trust, Senate Bill 5464. It almost got out of committee this February during the legislative session. We need to support this. It's going to come back in the November session. Bob Hasegawa, District 11, Senate Bill 5464. Let's establish a state bank. And I'm going to introduce Linda.
Thank you, Andy. I came to this group not really knowing what soft secession was. And so I just want to say this has been a great learning experience for me with this dynamic group. And I'm hoping that you all will take away from this some of what I did. How do we engage the public? Boy, that's kind of one of the hardest things I think we have to do. Rallies bring people together and create camaraderie and demonstrate the power of the people. We use those rallies to motivate people with concrete actions. Another way is to create broad coalitions based on protecting common values. This has been a discussion for many of us over the last year. What can we do to bring people together? We know there are more of us out there. In our world today, we are all so busy. Whether it is our job, work, kids, grandkids, time is limited and it goes fast. Along with that, we're burned out. All we want to do is get up in the morning and just deal with our own stuff. No one wants to go to more meetings, sit on the phone or computer, door knock, stand on street corners. So how can we engage people in the fights we have before us? We know the voice of the people is our most powerful tool. We have seen it over and over, specifically in Minnesota. Rallies and demonstrations are important. The number of people protesting the same day or place resonates across the media. ICE has not been able to build more facilities only because the people have stood up in each community and across our nation. It is how we have brought change over the decades. We can organize watches in our own community for important news events, watch parties, like the upcoming Democratic Convention. We can bring people together to talk and learn from one another. Connecting with like-minded people helps. Join groups already doing this work and support their goals. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can reach out to our leaders in our communities at the state, county, national level. Ask them to use every tool available to respond to the issues we're talking about. Get proclamations and resolutions in writing. Focus on the solution. We can join boards and attend board meetings in our community. I used to think these were not the most important things, but they are. What happens in our communities is where we can really make a difference. Connect with coalitions like Indivisible, No Kings. We can do things from home, write postcards and letters to the representatives, senators, judges, governors, commissioners, and boards. We only have 7 months until the midterms. We need all hands on deck. Ray is going to present the next slide.
Citizen pressure is what works. We elect our officials. Okay. Politicians care about re-election and money. When we're calling our elected officials, we need to demand specific actions. Personal phone calls to state officials are much more effective than mass emails. When we form coalitions with other groups, we multiply those calls to the state officials. And this next bit is straight from Christopher Armitage, one of his articles. I copied it right out of there. The magic happens at these thresholds. 10 calls in an hour and the staff notices. This is in any agency. Could be the treasurer's office, the attorney general's office. 50 calls in a day, there's an emergency meeting. 100 calls in a day and the office shuts down to handle it. 500 calls in a week and policy change is considered. 1,000 calls equals historical precedent, and this forces action. When we collaborate with our other coalitions to organize and create this mass of calls in a day, they take notice. All we got to do is connect and organize and make those calls together, and our voices become louder. And next, Linda, back to Linda on what we're doing currently right here with our what we did with our focus group.
Shit. Sorry, folks.
Duck. Little technical difficulty, bear with us. There we go.
Okay. So current citizen actions in Clallam County. No new ICE detention facilities in Washington. We have a flyer campaign that is going on. We have lots of signatures already, but of course we could always use more. So I'm very interested in what we can do about this because I do not want a detention center in my backyard. So I want to protect our peninsula from ICE detention camps potentially being built here. We, the people, have the power to stop that. It has not been contemplated yet that we know of, but in many cases, in other towns, it happened without conversation or forewarning. We have an unoccupied airport on the Quileute Prairie with old airplane hangars and other remote buildings and land across the peninsula. They don't need a building, they can build one. Let's be proactive, as other communities have. It is better and easier to stop something before it happens than after it is in progress. A lot of people tell me if I say something to about this, people will say, well, have they been talking about that? Is that going to happen? Well, no, but they didn't talk about it in these other places either. They just tried to sneak it in. We know DHS is attempting to expand detention capacity by converting warehouses into detention facilities without public notice or hearings. We know already local activists have stopped 13 proposed warehouse conversions across the country, but more sites are being planned. ICE has billions to spend and is not stopping, and the human cost is already devastating. Since October, 26 people have died in ICE custody. These facilities impact power, water, and sewer systems as witnessed by other cities and towns, and ICE does not care about that. Since February, Spokane, Renton, Kent, SeaTac, Tukwila, Seattle, King County, and Pierce County have all passed moratoriums ranging from 6 months to a year on the construction of new detention facilities, or the expansion of existing ones, like the one in Tacoma, largely on the grounds of land use concerns. Tacoma's zoning regulations from 2018 already effectively prevent the detention center there from expanding. What can we do? Just like all the other things we've been talking about today, people power. Take action. So join our No Detention Facilities in Washington flyer campaign. Call the Clallam County Democrats for a flyer and a petition. Urge Governor Ferguson, 360-902-4111, to issue an emergency order blocking any new ICE detention facilities in our state, and our elected representatives in Olympia, Adam Birnbaum and Mike Chapman, to urge Governor Ferguson to sign it. So soft secession can do this for us. Lisa will be presenting our next slide.
Thank you, Linda. I'm going to talk a little bit about DOGE. Now, a little bit of a reminder, you might remember that DOGE, that stands for Department of Government Efficiency, which was led by Elon Musk. And this was terribly destructive, and it was a complete failure and a really bad joke in supposedly cutting waste. So, Mr. Armitage wrote 2 separate articles on how we can fight back on their data stealing. The first one said, Democrats can launch criminal investigations into DOGE today. The second article said, people are already filing local police reports against DOGE. So what is the specific crime we're after? Back in March of last year, DOGE team members used a server called Cloudflare to share social security data among themselves. That server was never approved to store Social Security data. And the staff, that is the good guys, the civil servants who are from our Social Security agency, they didn't even know that Doge employees. Sorry, little interruption with the microphone. Okay, then there was a report, and that was triggered by a whistleblower. And after that, we knew that Doge software engineers actually removed sensitive personal data of more than 500 million Americans from Social Security. This is absolutely a crime. In fact, I believe it's a felony, even if just one person has this stolen. So what is the law? First, the crime of identity theft under several laws is considered to be committed in the state where a victim actually resides. So because of the fact that there are victims who live right here in Washington state, the crime is legally considered to be committed in our state. Second, every state constitution grants its attorney general, their AG, different authority. In our particular state, Washington, the law says that there must be a referral coming from a county prosecutor or a governor to the attorney general in order to begin an investigation and then hopefully prosecute. And who is it that actually takes that very first action, the first step to contact the county prosecutor? That's us, regular citizens. So going back to the AG, we know that our particular Attorney General, Nick Brown, is extremely aggressive. He's actually filed 4 dozen lawsuits. These are civil suits against this administration. But while civil suits can slow things down and bring injunctions, they are not sufficient. It is the investigations and the prosecutions that are really necessary. As Mr. Armitage pointed out, in fact, the people who are now dismantling federal agencies and looting public funds, they're not afraid of injunctions. What they're afraid of is handcuffs, that is prison. So the actions. So that first article that I mentioned, the Democrats can launch criminal investigations, at the very bottom contained specific sample letters to both the county prosecutors, whoever they might be, and to the governor, and they can be used by anyone in Washington. The second article, people are filing police reports, revealed that people read this, and it revealed that there were citizens, our own neighboring counties, that's Jefferson and Kitsap counties, who did take that action, and they did send that letter to their county prosecutors. Then when 2 of us in this particular group sent that same letter to our prosecutor, Mark Nichols, he responded to us that he did just as the letter asked and sent that request to investigate right up the chain to our Attorney General's office, Nick Brown. So where we're at now, we still have a big question. Is the Attorney General going to investigate, get enough information, or is he already investigating these crimes of Doge? Right now, I've learned that there is a policy that that office does not reveal ongoing investigations, nor will they reveal that they've refused to do an investigation. So what we have is we have to hope that if they're going to do this, this is something very newsworthy, and that there will be a very big and a very public announcement if they're going after Doge. And Linda, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay. So I want to talk about corporate and dark money. We have to negate Citizens United. We already know states have the power to change corporate charters, so we need to use it. And what's the Montana plan? Montana is ahead of the curve. So let's talk about Citizens United and dark money. The truth that has been hiding in plain sight. A little history. In 2010, the Supreme Court shattered campaign finance laws with its decision in Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. Before the Supreme Court's 2010 ruling, billionaires made up only 0.3% of federal election spending. By 2024, 300 billionaires and their families contribute more than $3 billion, which was 19% of all federal election donations. Citizens United held that government may not regulate a corporation's right to spend money independently in elections. But the court did not define what a corporation is. Each state creates and defines its definition of a corporation. For more than 2 centuries, the power to build corporations and to define their form, limits, and privileges has belonged to the states, and only to the states. The sovereign authority to decide which powers states grant to the corporations they charter includes the authority to not grant their corporations the power to spend in politics. So states can act to diminish the impact of Citizens United by passing state laws, regulating corporate political spending by redefining corporate charter powers, enforcing stricter campaign finance disclosure, or passing resolutions calling for a federal constitution amendment, which we know would be hard. We are not alone. Montana, the Montana Plan, is considering a ballot initiative that would prohibit corporations from spending on state ballot issues and elections. The Montana Plan. We can do it too. Over 20 states have formally requested Congress to hold a convention for proposing an amendment to officially reverse the 2010 decision. So what can we do? Senators Hasagawa and Chapman put forth Senate Bill SB 6358 last session, which did not pass. In a nutshell, it defines what a corporation is and defines their powers and abilities. It would also not grant or recognize any power to engage in any election activity or ballot measure activity. It would, at the least, limit the dark money in our elections in Washington. We need to make sure this passes next session. This bill is not going to solve all of it, but it would certainly be a good start. So we can do this too in Washington State, using the soft secession model and take back our power in Washington State. Andy Geiger is next. Take it away, Andy.
I'm going to please our chair by using the microphone. Why is soft secession so urgent? All of us woke up this morning to the news that several members of Congress, including senators, representatives, urging the passage of a bill in Congress to use taxpayer money, $400 million, to build the god-awful ballroom. Secretary of Defense was on Capitol Hill today testifying about the $1.5 trillion request for defense. I'm still shaking with rage about thinking that almost $2 trillion of our taxpayer money is being even thought about for such unfortunate use. In the meantime, they're blowing up fast and they're moving fast and breaking things by following their 2025 playbook. Our safety nets, our health care, things that we care a great deal about. Instead of using that money to build better childcare and all kinds of things that we badly need in this country, we're talking about almost $2 trillion for a ballroom and for making missiles and stuff. Innocent people have been and are being kidnapped, harmed, and their rights disregarded. Safety nets created by our tax dollars are being destroyed. Congress is in a stalemate situation and therefore incredibly ineffective. Collective action by us is what we have left. And that's why the idea of soft secession is so appealing to me and so important. It seems to me that if we work really hard to encourage our state officers, state officials, and departments, that our systems function as strongly as they can, that we build local institutions that keep our resources here, will have a lot more benefit effect than just trying to get us through the next 2.5 years. Making our states stronger and more efficient and more capable is a great, great idea. So I think the soft secession idea is really, really important. Upcoming, we have elections. This is a midterm year. And Tim Wheeler is going to talk to us about that. You don't need a microphone. No.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, I very much appreciate it. I want to remind you of what Linda said. We have 7 months. It's less than 7 months, I do believe. And she said we all have to get out into the streets. I can't remember exactly how she put it. We got to get up off our hind ends and get out and be talking to people about these midterm elections. If we are going to stop Trump and stop this attack on our basic rights, stop the war in Iran that is running out of control, we've got to vote. We've got to end MAGA Republican control of the House and Senate. And it's very deeply tied to Chris Armitage's concept of soft secession. I have a copy of his pamphlet here. I've been reading it carefully and more than once. And I hope all of you get a copy of it and study it, because it tells us some important ideas on how we fight to defend our democracy. You know, the right to vote is the most precious democratic right we have. And I have here a paragraph about the blood that has been spilled and the struggles we wage to expand our right to vote, starting from the founding of our democracy, of our country. And, you know, the right of ex-slaves to vote, the right of women to vote, the right of people who are 18 years of age to vote, the passage of the Voting Rights Act, which was to end Jim Crow practices aimed at stripping African American people of the right to vote. These were precious rights that we fought for. Think of Medgar Evers. He gave his life in the struggle to win voting rights. So those are precious rights enshrined in our Constitution. But that's the right to vote. How we vote, how we conduct our elections is a state function as determined, as stated in the U.S. Constitution. It is a most basic sign of sovereignty, of state sovereignty. And here in Washington State, our legislature determined that the people favored voting by mail. And we enacted vote by mail. It's universal in the state of Washington. And it protects the right to vote. It expands the number of people that vote, and it reduces voter fraud. It is a plus in every way. And everybody agrees that. Do you know that the people who manage our, the auditor of our county and all of those folks there, they're all Republicans. Do they disagree with the right of people to vote by mail? No. They agree that it's a good idea too. So it's not a partisan issue. This is a protecting our right to vote. Now, can we win this fight? Well, before this meeting opened, we were discussing whatever happened to the Save America Act that Trump was tooting his horn about. And you know what the essence of the Save America vote was, what that act was about? Stripping millions of people of the right to vote. That's what it was all about. And we know this is a critical issue because, do you know, in the last election, in 2024, the last presidential election, 90 million, nearly 90 million people who were eligible to vote did not vote. They did not even register. And many of them were receiving their ballots in the mail, and they did not even bother to fill them out. Why? Because they imagined that it didn't make any difference who won. They are so wrong. These are people who are so badly mistaken about the fate of our nation. Voting does matter. So anyway, what happened to the Vote Act, the Save America Act? We just found out the House vote passed it and the Senate rejected it. It's killed. It's killed. And just a few weeks before that in Virginia, the voters rose up and they voted against a scheme by Trump to make the delegation, the congressional delegation, one Democrat and the other, 8 or 9, going to be Republicans. They voted it down overwhelmingly. 60% of the voters voted to, in effect, they were voting to make their congressional delegation a majority Democrat. So it's an election that matters. It's a right that matters. And you know, why is soft secession an issue in this? Because our Constitution gives the states the power to determine how we vote. And that is why we must defend our state sovereignty on this issue of the right to vote by mail. And we should be sending letters to all of our elected officials saying, we demand the preservation of voting by mail. You have no right to take this away from us. This is our basic democratic right to vote by mail. Thank you. Oh, yeah. See, we have up here Stop the Save Act.
Tim,
Remove millions.
Tim, you're going to introduce our esteemed guest.
Yes, Chris Armitage. Thank you, Chris, for being here with us. I so much appreciate it. And I have your pamphlet. I've been reading your articles online. You are a genius. You are a master. And I'm glad you're here. You may want to have a few remarks of your own, but also to answer questions from the audience. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, well, oh, no problem.
What did I do? Bear with me. I forgot to end the slideshow. It's here somewhere. There we go. There we go. Welcome, welcome.
That's how we greet him.
Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Christopher.
That was
You're
incredible.
so young looking.
My birthday was a few days ago, actually.
Alright.
34 years old, same age as some cool folks who I hope to emulate. And I mean that was incredible, guys. I have done the frequency with which I'm doing these sort of things is increasing and has been for a while, but you just floored me. I mean, when you spend your career building and learning within different spaces and then bringing it all together and synthesizing it, and even with my academic work that's in peer review right now, it had a weird path from lived experience to education to practical application to journalism to academic publication. And to do all of that and then have folks put on an hour exploration of that work, and you got it all right. I mean, I'm honored. And it just, I mean, really, I hope though that you will share this with me, the slideshow, any video you're willing to share, because I'm telling you, there are indivisible and county Dem groups across the country who are asking for this stuff, and I want to get it to them because you just nailed it. So thank you all for like this. This has been already just an incredible experience that I've been so happy just to watch. All right. Now I'm happy to take questions or just talk about anything you want me to talk
So
about.
our first question is, Tim just forgot to ask you, how do we protect our midterm elections?
Well, I want to be very pragmatic, very realistic about it, and I think part of why people appreciate my work is that I respect there is no strategic value in sugarcoating things. In special forces, there's a planning exercise that you do where you look at the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and the most likely scenario. And when I look at the most likely scenario, I think we work really hard, but there's going to be some things that we're not going to like, and they're going to be difficult. It's tough to plan out ahead, but I do think elections will happen. Part of the reason for that is because there's strategic benefits in electoral autocracies to just having unfair elections rather than having the absence of elections. What do we do to protect our elections? We continue to talk to our elected officials and tell them how much we care about free and fair elections. There's 4 pieces of model legislation that the Existentialist Republic team has put out. One of those is for creating a red line trigger law, just like happened today. Florida, within hours of the Supreme Court's decision, passed a gerrymandering law. Other states are ready to do the same. They were waiting for this to happen. We cannot afford to allow an election to be tilted so extremely in one direction that we don't have a representative government, and then hope that civil lawsuits take care of it. Because when your country's that far gone from a free and fair democracy, then having the courts take 6 months or a year to say, oh, can we undo the stolen election? It's just not going to happen. Trump was convicted on 34 felony counts, and a judge in New York said, well, he got elected president. I waited 6 months to sentence him because I wanted the election to happen, and he won. So now we're just going to cancel his sentence. So as we approach the midterms, I think we have to accept that it's not going to be perfect, and we can't let that crush us. I think they are going to succeed in every Republican state at creating unfair elections, and that will inhibit our ability to have the landslide necessary at the federal level to have a veto-proof majority or a conviction-capable Senate on impeachment. But at the state level, our elections are good. We should pass that red law legislation that says, so part of how the mechanism for that is it says if the constitutional order is broken to an extreme enough degree, then the state will order private employers to redirect their federal tax withholdings. The state will then disperse those upon restoration of the constitutional order. Now, this is what we do with laws every single day, right? It's not legal for somebody to come to your house and throw you in a cage unless you're suspected of committing murder. And if you're suspected of committing murder, we designate people who are allowed to come to your home and confine you from, take away your freedom because you're reasonably suspected of a criminal activity. So the same can be attributed to our government. At the state level, we can speak to Governor Ferguson, we can speak to AG Brown, we can speak to our representatives, we voice these concerns, and we say, if you don't have ideas about how we're going to protect it, if your answer is it's not my job, or I think it's going to be all right, but I don't have anything to contribute, you can say, hey, well, here's a piece of model legislation. Tweak it as you please. But this model legislation says you write the laws. You draw the red lines. What is an extreme enough thing that if Donald Trump and the GOP did it to interfere with our elections, it would be the right thing for us to do, an extreme enough severance, just like with the murder thing, where you can take somebody's freedom away, where you say, you've severed this tie so extremely in advance because we suspected it was going to happen that we are going to order all employers to redirect their taxes to us, and we are happy to hold it. And as soon as there is a free, peaceful restoration of the democratic order, we will hand the tax dollars back. This is a peaceful solution. It's a reasonable solution. But also, feel free to come up with more. We have to do something. And the best answer is the right answer. The second best answer is the wrong answer. And the worst answer is no answer.
Okay.
Okay, I am going to look. I don't see we have any questions online, so we're going to go to the audience here. And if you have a question, please stand up and state your question loud enough that we can all hear it. Yeah, there is a microphone.
Question related to mail-in voting, which is what we have here in Washington. I was really interested in reports from NPR that the US Postal Service could go broke as soon as this October. And I wonder if there's a way to create a plan for that.
That is I'm really happy you made that question. You might see that in an article in the next week or two because there's a solution for that. And I shouldn't be as excited as I am, but I'm just a public policy nerd. And even in these horrible times, I mean, like Thomas Paine, if there's going to be tough times, I want to be there for them. And so when you bring that up, there is a solution. So when we look at the Public Bank of North Dakota, there's also the Metro Surge healthcare plan that's in New York and a couple other examples throughout the country. The government can set up revenue generating public services, and we can do that in Washington State. Now, Senator Hasagawa, I need to get a hold of him because I just keep hearing about amazing work that he's up to. And this is an opportunity for the state to have a revenue generating resource. As the GOP has continued to tighten the reins and damage and destroy purposefully, we've seen it coming for so long. The U.S. Postal Service, we have an opportunity here in Washington State to stand up something better for people in Washington State that generates revenue and makes sure they get their ballots. If Amazon can do it at a profit, we have the state of Washington is one of the most well-run, functioning governments of all the states. When you rack it up, we have our issues, but a lot is done well in Washington State. The state could address this. The state could say, we are going to start handling mail. And if you set up a public bank, you don't have to go into debt to do it. The state can actually generate revenue from having its public bank that, just like the United States, when we built the Hoover Dam and so many other, the federal highway system, all these great investments in our future. We can do that at the state level. We can do things that are an investment in our future that don't break the bank, that do the opposite. We could set up a state level delivery service and it makes sure everybody gets their ballots, and a lot tougher for them to interfere with, and generates revenue that helps fund schools or healthcare or whatever else.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone else have a question? Good job. Just people on Zoom can't
Hold
hear.
up. All right.
Gotta speak loud.
Could you give us a little history of
Washington State's efforts to have a state bank. I know the League of Voters was for it, and I assume the banks were against it. So in looking at public disclosure, can tell us who's opposing it and how it can become a more viable option at the next session.
Well, you know what? I just want to say right off the bat, there is nothing that scares like bad actors more than the idea of a functioning government service. Non-tax revenue is a word I wish I could put it on billboards across the country, because there's a lot of people who act like the only way you can raise money for a government and provide social safety nets and equitable environments is by raising taxes. And that's just not how it works. Something like public banking, last year, the Public Bank of North Dakota made 340 million in revenue. And they haven't had a year where they lost money in over 100 years since they started. Now, Senator Hasagawa continues to bring it up. It keeps getting pulled into committee. It's been over a decade of just, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. I was speaking with Ben Stuckert recently. He's former city of Spokane city council president. And he said, well, I heard that it's actually against our state constitution. And Ben's a plugged in guy. So I did digging on that. And no, the only difference between the North Dakota Constitution and the Washington Constitution as it relates to the banking is that theirs explicitly authorizes the creation of businesses by the government. Well, the Constitution of the United States has unenumerated rights. It grants powers. When you don't explain a limit, then there is a presumption of right. That is something our nation was founded on, whether it's you as an individual or your state. And so Senator Hasagawa is leading it, and it can happen, and it's not against the state constitution. That's the thing. Ben told me that, former Spokane City Council president, and he led great initiatives. He's head of the Spokane Housing Consortium now. He's on top of his stuff. He said that just because he heard it through the grapevine. And that's how so many of us get caught into these defaults where we just say, oh, I guess it's just going to need to be tied up in committee for another session or two because they got to work out these details. But no, we could just copy the bill that was passed by a bunch of the farmers. How did the Bank of North Dakota happen in North Dakota? Is the farmers were mad, and in a 2-year period, they took over the state house, the governor's mansion. They had a coup basically because they managed to win so many elections, and they got those things passed. And so give support for Senator Hasagawa and tell him it's because of that, and get a hold of other representatives and do it across the state. Whatever, we're here to win, and just be really vocal about it. And like with the 5 phone call or the math that's done, if you have a state house representative get 1,000 phone calls in a week, they're all asking for the same thing. They're gonna do that thing. Their whole career trajectory changes. Probably a few thousand people in the whole district might know their name. So you're a game changer, and that's part of why the media puts so much attention at the federal level, but you have so much power the more local you get to get things like a public bank, to get things like healthcare for everyone, nonprofit healthcare even. So the sky's the limit with that. Don't let anybody tell you it's not their job. Sorry, I soapboxed a little there. Hopefully that answers your question.
Right.
Feel free to do. Okay.
We have panelists who have questions for you, Christopher.
I love answering questions.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So it's certainly becoming obvious to our little group, and I hope the audience, that the public banks really do represent so many ways that it could benefit the state and push back against the Fed. So right now, because you're talking to other people in other states, my first question is there another state that's kind of looking at this or ripe for this that we could also?
California's close.
California, all right.
California is close, and New York is close too.
Wow. Okay. So California.
Don't let them beat us. Don't let New York and California beat us to the punch, guys.
Well, to me, this sounds like something that, if we had all the time in the world, we'd make a campaign out of it between now and November. But boy, we got lots to do. But the sooner the better. Who else can we pressure besides our legislators? Governor?
A really good question. Well, so I've been publishing some pieces lately that are about helping the audience, and this is in my books too, but I'm trying to integrate it more into my articles. And by the way, every single thing I publish, whether it's my 3 books or the Existentialist Republic's dozen booklets or our 4 pieces of model website, everything is available for free as a downloadable PDF. I don't paywall even the books that I write. I have a publisher, and I told them it has to be in my contract that I can give away free PDFs anywhere I want, anytime I want. So just so you guys know that. But the way, so selectorate theory, I'm gonna try and go through these quick, but I did publish something on it recently. How do you create influence campaigns beyond just talking to the politicians? You figure out it's a selectorate theory. There's a book called The Dictator's Handbook, really incredible. It talks about the idea of winning coalitions. Like a dictator, part of what Trump is doing is you reduce the number of people who have access to your power. So when you look at your state senator, your state house member, whoever, they have endorsing organizations that have followed them throughout their career. They have key donors. They have folks who continue to be the pillars of their progression, that if you removed those, somebody would take their place. If you get top endorsers, couple unions, couple special, like right now we're putting a pressure campaign on California Attorney General Bonta. He's the first Pacific Islander first Filipino Attorney General in the United States. So one of the groups that we're communicating with is the Californian Filipino Pacific Islander Coalition. And we're saying, like, look, if you have these values that make you want to support him, we get it. Everybody loves Rob, but he has the evidence, and maybe he's investigating it right now. We'd love transparency, but if he isn't, we're just going to keep pressuring until we have confirmation. So you identify the pillars to their power, and you communicate with them, and you apply pressure to them, because every level down is an opportunity to exert more influence. And that is how you change things. Every single person here has the opportunity to grow your influence politically. And I mean, I know, and I know this group has to know these people, because there's probably half the room is this person. I have a good friend in Spokane, and he, for 40 years, he delivers yard signs for his favorite candidate every cycle. And he has every Democrat on city council will answer his phone calls or his text messages, and the mayor will do the same, because he's just been showing up for decades in a very manageable but very helpful way. And he shows up at their events, and that means a lot for a city council candidate, or it's even a city council member. They do these events even in Spokane, and it's a couple people. So you do that, and then you go a step further and you figure out who are their pillars to power, who are their keys to their authority, who helps them continue to advance, who would it hurt to lose. Because when they're getting a phone call from the Washington Educators Association, like, hey, this public banking thing would really help. It would help. I mean, public banking is a key, and I haven't figured out how to help people understand how pivotal it is to everything else. Because with public banking, you're able to profit, make revenue off of funding public works projects. Like, whoa, that's game changer. But I haven't figured out how to make it exciting enough to go viral. But anyway, end of answer, unless there's follow-ups.
I have a follow-up. That is the number one thing that got me hooked on you. This public bank seems to be the solution to all our leveraging, right? And the thought that Andy did the research, and right now I guess we use Bank of America, right, in Washington State. And Bank of America in the first quarter profited by $8.6 billion. I don't know who else is banking with them, but Washington State could have kept that money. It seems to me all the taxes that we pay and property taxes and would be going into our bank, right? Earning interest. Isn't this also what would happen?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what? I want so badly, and I want to come to Clallam, by the way. You guys, I want to be in your county. I want to hang out with you guys because I love what you're doing. I'm also going to write another piece about public banking now because of you guys, all right? And that money should be the taxpayers' money. We should be collecting interest on that. We should be They have it in North Dakota. And they could expand it, but
I have a suggestion for you. Try and use plain speak. You're really educated and you're so articulate. but sometimes I get really lost in, how, your incredible vocabulary. So for the masses, fourth grade level, plain language, we call it. And the insurance companies now are mandated a lot of times to use plain language so that the average person can understand what's happening with their bill, right? Or their statement.
Totally.
So give it a try. I know it's hard.
Yes.
And pretend you're talking to a fifth grader or someone like me who is self-educated, not college educated.
I'm gonna write down the idea. I think I want to title the article. Gotta write it down. How to convince a fourth grader that public banking is awesome.
There you go.
So, and just to tell you a little bit about my process real quick, this is something I've learned about myself. So when I start out with an idea, it is in very robotic academic terms because I've studied the research. Like I have someone who I've mentored a little bit on Substack. I like encouraged them to join and then have really stuck with them. And what I explained to them is you have to go upstream to, like, if you want to have really good information to share with people, you don't just watch the same news everybody else is watching. You have to go to several levels above that, and that's usually like academic research and just the boring stuff. And so I'm in a process always of refining how I communicate ideas to make them simpler and to have better metaphors, and that's a higher level of intelligence. The highest level of intelligence is to explain something complicated in really simple terms and have it be totally true. And one of my favorite Kurt Vonnegut quotes is, any scientist who can't explain their job to a 4-year-old is a charlatan. And so I promise you, it matters to me. It does. It's just sometimes also like I have to put an idea out there in those academic terms and then hear the questions that people have to help me understand where their catch points are too. Yes. Great. All right. I'm excited to write that article now. So thank you. You guys are giving me some great fuel here.
I want to pick up on Lori Force's question about the post office, and that it may go out of business by October.
As early as October or
Yeah.
possibly February 27.
To me, I don't think it'll go broke. I think there's another game plan at work here, and it applies not only to the post office, it applies to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, you name it. It's called privatization. That's what that scoundrel in the White House loves, is privatizing everything so that our Medicare is, everyone's on what is it called, Advantage and Medicare Advantage, and the scoundrels are reaping billions and billions of dollars in profits.
So what's your question for Chris?
Oh, yeah, so Chris, I've been holding forth now. What are your thoughts on privatization?
I published a piece a few months ago called Public Option Everything. Now, first of all, and by the way, it ain't just Trump. I mean, people blame Reagan for starting all this, but Nixon is the one who made it legal for there to be for-profit healthcare in the United States. Yep. GlaxoSmithKline gave him a lot of money for that. And so this has been a long-term, even after World War II and the business coup, this has been a plan. It's the GOP, and I will tell you, I want Donald Trump to live a long, healthy life because he is a lightning rod of pissing people off. And I really worry more that the exact same things are going to happen, but a lot fewer people are going to have the news cycle blasting it in their face because it won't be in such a disgusting wrapper. But it's the same policies that'll happen either way. Privatization is a scam. Any politician who's telling, like, I hate this thing where they say, here's the metaphor I want you to use or to consider using when having this conversation and educating others is, let's say there's 3 groups and one of those groups wants to say, okay, there's kids who come to school hungry. That's ridiculous. We shouldn't have that. So we'll take some of this money we have and we're just going to buy food and we're going to give it to all the kids. And then group 2 says, well, why don't we hire a private business to do this? And they're going to give the kids really gross food because they need to have they have a duty to their shareholders to generate as much revenue as possible. And of course, they have to give a nice, bonus to the CEO. Look at how much revenue he earned for the shareholders. That's his job. And then also, we're going to make a bunch of forms, and the parents are going to have to fill these forms out. And our education system's crap, so it's really hard for them to fill it out. And also, we have to hire a bunch of people to handle the forms. And so 20% of the kids are going to get garbage food, and we're going to make a bunch more BS work, and we're going to pay 5 times as much as the people who just gave the food directly. And then there's a third group that just says, well, screw the kids. We don't care about them. We just want to give the money to powerful people and rich people and hand it back to them. And 2 of those groups really suck. And the idea, I hate the word progressive, guys, a little bit, because it's common sense. It's good policy. These are research-backed, replicatable, time and again proven policies. The rest of the world handles it. What the hell is progressive? It's common sense. And that is what we're trying to do, is just institute policies that say, why are you handing my tax dollars to a private business so that they can buy a yacht, so the CEO gets a yacht, so that they can deliver value for shareholders? That's garbage. And so public option everything. That's the article. I want to have public. I mean, that scares them because they're scared of competition, because they want unfair business practices. I want to see single payer healthcare happen, but I want to see it because the state has such a damn good public option that everybody's like, well, forget about private insurers. They're terrible. And maybe in that environment, private insurers would actually have to compete. But if they get beat out of the market, good.
That's the winning ticket.
That's right.
That's
Lisa has a question.
And I wanted
for
one
you.
more thing. Oh, one more thing real quick is,
Okay, one more. Sort of-
well, just if we can, no, I can do as many questions as you want. I just want to mention one last thing about that is we can lower taxes for people. Democrats can lower taxes for the public, and non-tax revenue streams are the way to do it. And we should. I don't think anybody who makes less than 6 figures should be paying taxes. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to say, I don't think anybody who makes less, we should be able to lower taxes for working class people while increasing social safety nets. Just one last thing, because that privatization thing gets my blood boiling. But please continue.
Okay. So anyway, if we somehow could gather certain groups together, even via the internet in different states, on one subject, and they could really hammer away at it, kind of like we did. But it would really be good if there was a way that you got plenty to do, but maybe somebody who could do that, kind of gather people that are interested in certain political, pushes that what they want to get done, and how's the way to do it. Compare notes, compare successes and failures. You get the idea.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
So an existentialist republic focus group from across the country. Is that, there you go.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, we have a Discord that's around 1,000 activists that we closed off the new entries right now because we're doing we grew really quick, and now we are like, okay, we need more infrastructure. We're talking about maybe being able to do well, we talked about maybe doing an event, but I mean, these are all wonderful ideas, and I'm building the plane as I go. Because for me, I'm a researcher, I'm a learner, I'm an educator, I'm a sharer of information, and so, but people want to connect. I do meetings like this all the time. What I will say is, please send me the slides and any video you're willing to share, because there's a bunch of groups that want to do this, and then maybe you could appoint a POC who could be like the soft secession person, and then I could start collecting those people, one person from every group, and then connect those groups.
Perfect idea.
And I'll answer as many questions as you will send my way, by the way.
That's how we organize. I don't think that we do have another question, and as I'm walking the microphone over, I just want to say that Mike Pelliciotti, your ally could, or your hook could be with the educating children, because he's been trying to get that bill passed to make it mandatory for children at elementary school level to have pretty extensive math courses. And we'll just use that as an inroad to say, we're going to educate these kids. Treasurer Pelliciotti, we'll educate the kids, the public will, for a public bank. we'll get them schooled up on it and they'll be calling your office.
You know, I would love to see, yes. Okay, that idea, we're gonna need to talk more about that because I want to write something getting kids to get in on activism, like especially really little kids, and like in funny, like get them to make the phone calls and stuff, and like because the idea of like an 8-year-old being like, I want to talk to you about public banking is
Yeah.
awesome.
My daughter, who is a Gonzaga graduate, just got her master's degree last year, and she's back here in Port Angeles as a teacher. And now the person asking a question is a mother of teachers, elementary school. So we've got some inroads. We can work with some kids here.
We can.
During COVID, I did a little bit of substitute teaching, and I also spent a summer as a wrestling coach for a middle school. And the substitute teaching, I checked out every grade, and just to like experience, it was really really interesting. And the elementary schoolers, like fourth through sixth grade, it was my favorite groups because they were really smart and they had an enthusiasm for learning that teenagers don't quite, they lose a little bit, it feels like a lot. And it was, I mean, that if we can capture some of that, that's going to make it, we cannot let ourselves get beat down by this situation. That's how they want us to feel. Freedom, it requires the courage to just like engage with your feelings about a situation. We do not have to live in fear. We do not have to be sad. Yeah, there's horrible suffering all over the place and it's unnecessary. But you know what? We're here because we're warriors for truth, justice, integrity, humanity. You be proud of yourself. Take the time to pat yourself on the back because every single one of you is just showing up for the future.
That's right.
My question is today I read something that really got me excited, which was Mark Carney of Canada started a sovereign wealth fund. And that's a state-owned sovereign wealth fund. Could our states do that as well as state banking? And there's a
Yes, they
public
could.
buy-in for it too, so we could invest in our own sovereign fund.
I have a dream. I have a dream that Washington State steps up and we go so far that we do things like that. Sovereign fund, a replacement for Social Security, public option, and we expand outward. And all these states that are regressive and moving back in time, Washington State's invites them. Hey, you want to join our state Social Security? We have these extra requirements. You got to start paying in earlier, this or that, or whatever. With the public option, you want it to generate revenue, but like, let's have our good ideas that generate revenue that help people invade other states with just good policy. And there's nothing stopping us from doing that. And the sovereign wealth fund. Yes, and here's the thing: these politicians at the lowest levels, they point at each other all the time. They say, "Oh no, it's not my job. I can't do that. I'm a city council member. I don't have anything to do with your healthcare. I can't have anything to do with your healthcare. All I can do is talk about zoning laws." And it's not true. It's just not true.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, but before we let you go, I'm going to ask our panelists to get up here in the front, and Norma, the moderator who started the group for us, is here in the audience. And I'm going to have someone take a photo with you in the background. Linda is up on the screen, and if our panelists will stand up right here.
Can we get a larger picture of Linda?
Well,
Probably not.
let's see. I think I can. Wait a minute now. I'm not so great at this technology, but if I do, how do I do that? There's a split screen or something, right?
Can you see him?
Gallery view.
Yeah.
How about, that's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, but no, he's too.
Is that a little, well, that's, yeah.
No, he's too little.
Okay. I don't know how to get rid of
Got
side
it,
by
babe.
side.
Turn around, Wendy.
Speaker.
Yeah, really. Oh, there you go. All right, well, let's just get a picture.
But did we block him?
No.
No. Okay, stand back up.
Norma, wait a minute, Norma's not, Norma, come on up.
And
Yes,
Christopher,
yes,
this is the way it all went.
Norma's getting in the photo. I'm
Oh,
gonna
there's
get.
Linda too. Linda, good deal.
Oh, there.
Now Christopher is not there.
Yes, he is. He's just.
Yeah.
There he is.
Hey.
Guys, let's go. Let's go.
Here we go, little Linda or a little Chris, you gotta have big bow.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so you step over this way, there you go.
Yeah,
Can we get Linda?
Here we go, right here. Right?
Cheese.
Yeah.
I got a few.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and you are welcome in Clallam County at any time. Our regular meetings are the second Wednesday of every month. And
I want to do something with you guys. I will come out on my own dime. Let's see if we can get some of your like state house people or something to like hang out, and then we all just advocate for good ideas. And
out here. Say hi. This is Tim.
exactly. And
Hi,
you-
Christopher.
Hi,
Hey, I have
Tim,
a
it's an honor to
question.
meet
How
you.
do we get copies of your written materials? Like your
The
pamphlet?
the existentialistrepublic.com, but you can also get it for free at buymeacoffee.com/TheER, and it's in the shop for $0.00. And you can you download those PDFs and print out 1 million copies of them for free, give them to anyone you want, because we had an American Revolution once upon a time because 1 out of 5 Americans read the same 52-page pamphlet. And I suspect that if 1 out of 5 Americans could be convinced to just hear 30 good pages of anything, doesn't have to be my words, because you guys did an amazing job tonight. Communicate the
Right.
ideas, People weren't talking about how amazing Thomas Paine was. They were talking about how great democracy was.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
That PDF to tons of people. So when you download his free PDF, then you can just share it. It's totally shareable.
Yes. Yes.
I
And we
read
have
your
a
piece on the Louisiana, the Supreme Court decision on gerrymandering in Louisiana. Excellent.
Thank you very much. I love learning, and so it makes me happy to be read, because I did a lot of writing when nobody read.
Okay, when do you want to come out here?
Well, we'll work it out.
But we'll figure it
Several of
out.
us will see you at the convention. Many of us are delegates and we will be there.
Yeah, I'm a delegate. Ellen's, of course, a delegate. Yeah.
I
look forward to seeing you.
Hang on.
It might end up being in the air if I make it,
Oh.
because I'm doing some work I'm supposed to go to Poland soon.
Oh.
And yeah, I'm going to be working with Ukrainian refugees. I want to do 2 projects in Poland. And so we're getting the dates worked out, but I want to be at the convention. And Clallam, you guys are now my second favorite county. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Spokane is
Thank
where I
you
live.
very much.
Spokane is, I don't know if you guys know, I
Yes.
live in Spokane.
Yeah.
So Spokane's got to be my number 1, but you guys get to, next year you're tied for first. How about that?
Thank you. Thank you, Christopher. You
Thanks,
were
guys.
outstanding.
We appreciate you
Hey, I
taking
appreciate
time.
it.
Thanks so much.